Last week I showed you all how I built this kitchen island for our kitchen. This was such a great addition, and I cannot wait to show you all how I epoxied the countertop to give it that marble look. So I did our countertops and our island at the same time. I started with the island and I primed the MDF well before it was ready, but here we are priming. I then cleaned off the countertop and decided to remove the soap handle from our sink. Super gross. Never use it. Just gonna throw that away. The most important part to this project is the prep work. I thought I prepped everything very well, and I found out later that I didn't. So take your time, really prep everything, allow yourself a day to really prepare for all of the circumstances that may happen. And please don't use paper to cover up for epoxy. Use plastic. I did not read the instructions, so I used paper, as you will see here. After I covered everything in our kitchen, I went ahead and prepped the countertops. This is the countertop paint that came in the kit that I ordered. I used a foam roller for this process and later went in with one of those little foam craft brushes, I guess. So that way I could really get into the corners and the back. After everything was dry, it was time to go in and sand. For the kitchen island, I did not use the paint that came with the epoxy kit. I just used my primer, and I went ahead and sanded the edges to give it that nice round over look, and also so that nobody would hurt themselves if they ran into it. And just made sure that everything was nice and smooth. I went in with a 120 grit here, and I didn't do anything more abrasive than that. After sanding, it was time to clean off all of the gunk, and then I used the countertop paint. After that countertop paint was dry, I went in with another 120 grit just to smooth everything out. Hand sanded this time. Here's that little foam brush that I was telling you about. One thing that I cannot stress enough is that even your black epoxy is clear. That's something that I was unaware of, and I really thought that if the paint did not cover it, I would be totally fine because the black epoxy would. Really press. Oh. turn that off and lock it. But it works. It works. And we're gonna put this up. I really wanted to test out my torch before I started playing with epoxy because I had never used a torch and I had never used epoxy before. So what I'm mixing here is a 1-to-1 ratio of hardener and epoxy. And then I separated out a little bit just for the black pigment to make my beautiful little lines, and added the white pigment to the rest of the container before continuing to mix thoroughly. It was time to pour, and I was a little discouraged at first. Listen to my dad. My dad told me that I should do a test piece, but honestly, after getting the hang of this, I found that there was really nothing that I needed to test, so I was totally fine. You go in with this scraper to evenly disperse all of your epoxy, and then you go in with one of the little brushes that they gave you after to just blot all of the areas to make sure that it looks nice and smooth, nice and even. I went in with a heat gun and just popped all the little bubbles before it was time to make those beautiful lines with the black epoxy. Oh, I like this. This is so good. This needs black here. What do you think? Ooh. Isn't this cool?
I don't even recognize it.
Isn't this really freaking cool? I really like this. I think I'm gonna maybe leave it as is. Do you think that anything needs to, I need to add in gray anywhere?
No, I think it's good. Just how are you gonna work the bubbles out?
Heat and then heat.
I think it looks really good.
You like it?
Yeah.
I love it. I think it looks incredible. I'm so excited. Ah! Okay, I'm gonna keep the bubbles down a bit.
All right, buddy, back to our hole.
Jared kept the dog in his office the whole time, so they went back upstairs. But after everything was applied, I went in with the torch and popped all the bubbles before moving on to this next little section of our counter. This is another mistake that was made. I was not prepared to do the entire countertop that night, and I wound up doing the entire countertop that night. I thought I was just going to do this section, and that was just not the case. So enjoy me working on this little piece right now. The next day, it was time to pour my clear coat, spread it evenly, and go ahead and torch out any of the bubbles. This just makes sure that you have a nice smooth look to everything. You'll see here that I wised up and I taped off my corner and I plasticked everything. You'll see why in a minute. It was not a good situation. Just out of gloves. I had to improvise. Thankfully, I was done pouring epoxy. My feet were stuck to everything. It was quite the event, really. I applied this top coat, and I think I applied it either way too early or maybe with the wrong roller. I don't know what happened, but you'll see here that I got a ton of little lines. They were very tacky, and that dried horribly. I did this on my island and my countertops. I should have realized after I did my island that I should not have moved on to the countertops. Mistakes were made. You live and you learn. The next day it dried, and I sanded everything down to try to get that nice smooth epoxy look back. And I did the best that I could. So just make sure you give yourself the appropriate amount of time to dry between applying a top coat and applying your epoxy. This was a ton of work, and I will be going back and redoing the backsplashes once it's a little warmer here in Illinois. But honestly, I think this was totally worth it. Check out the finished product. In my next video, I'll show you how I finished redoing our kitchen. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and comment down below. I'll see you all next time.